There was a lot of horrible things he did to her. He was sicko, just evil.
A brutal killing.
Diane was wonderful. She'd do anything in this world for you. It just rattled me all the way to my bones.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
We started getting phone calls from women that had encountered this man.
He had a crush on Diane. He would send her flowers and give her gifts.
It had the telltale signs of a serial killer.
The truth will be revealed.
He had this fantasy. Just came a time where he couldn't resist any longer, and he had to act it out.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. November 15th, 2001. A massive storm rips through Austin, Texas.
It was one of the worst storms that had ever hit Austin in, like 100 years or so. We had about 15 tornadoes come through that day.
The morning after, one resident is unaccounted for.
Hi, Diane. It's Gloria. Just checking in with you. Hi, Diane. It's 2 o'clock. Just worried about you. Wanted to check to make sure you're okay. Give me a call.
Diane Holik was with IBM. She was a project manager.
Most of her stuff was teleconferencing. The storm blew in Thursday afternoon. She was supposed to get back online by Friday at 10 o'clock. They had a big conference call. When she didn't make that conference call, everybody got concerned that maybe something had happened to her in the storm. That was very out of character for her to not make a teleconference call. They became concerned enough to call the police.
When officers first arrived at the house, they looked in through the windows. They checked around the back and all the doors were secure. There was no signs of forced entry anywhere.
They rang the doorbell and nobody came to the door. They noticed that Diane had a for sale sign out in front of her house.
A neighbor who had a key saw that there was police cars over at the property, so she walked down and offered to let them in.
When the officers entered the house, they checked all the rooms, couldn't find anything.
It was immaculately clean, everything in its place. But one officer, as he was leaving, thought about a room that he had gone into and reflected he didn't go all the way to the back of the room. So he returned to that room, and on the other side of the bed, furthest away from the door, he saw that the bedspread had been pulled over something.
When he rounded the corner, he noticed that there was a body halfway stuffed underneath a daybed that was in that bedroom. He immediately noticed that she had a deep furrow in her neck, which suggested strangulation. We knew that we were dealing with a homicide.
Lead investigator Detective Tracy Garish and Detective Eric De Los Santos are now responsible for finding Diane's killer. Their first task is to notify friends and family.
I got a call. It was Detective Garish from Austin PD. She goes, well, I'm sorry to tell you that someone had come into Diane's house and that she had been killed there. It just rattled me all the way to my bones. I just busted into tears at that point. Diane was wonderful. She'd do anything in this world for you. Anytime anybody came up to Diane, they were like an instant friend. She was like a sister. And to die the way that I was imagining at that time was devastating.
We learned through Diane's friends that she was a very vivacious, wonderful woman, a true innocent victim. I was in charge of the case and everything fell upon my shoulders. At the end of the day, that can weigh on your mind heavily.
To catch Diane's killer, detectives must unearth all the details of her final day.
Establishing a victim's timeline up to her death is key in any investigation. You want to go back even just 24 hours, find out what she was doing every hour of that day, up until the time where, of course, the murder happens.
We knew that the last time she had been on the computer was approximately 3:59. That's when she shut it down to prepare for the storm coming in. And then the following morning, she missed her early morning conference call, which would have been about 10 o'clock. We estimated that she probably was murdered sometime between Thursday after 4 and Friday morning at 10.
They focus on Diane's body, looking for further clues.
She was fully clothed. She still had jewelry on. She had a watch on. She still had some money sticking out of the pocket of her pants. When you're being strangled, your basic instinct would be your hands would go up to try to pull that ligature off of you. But we didn't see any broken nails. We noticed that she had these pattern that is similar to flexi cuffs on her wrists. We didn't find the ligature that was used to strangle her. We didn't find the flexi cuffs that were used to bind her hands.
The color of the wrist being red suggests that her heart was beating when the bindings were applied. She was either struggling against the bindings, causing abrasions, or the bindings were applied tightly, or both.
So we knew that the suspect took her by surprise, had to bind her because she would be fighting, and then strangled her.
As we went through the crime scene and searched the room, we observed that there was some makeup on the rug in the room that Diane was found.
So we felt like maybe that's where she had been taken down and basically subdued. We examined the entire house to look for some type of big struggle. We didn't find anything. Her car was still there, her wallet was still there, and she still had a significant amount of jewelry that was left over.
As we continued to process it, we found that it appeared to have been cleaned.
It was the most pristine crime scene we've ever seen. We didn't even find, really, Diane's fingerprints in her own house. And that's very unusual when you live there. We used a UV light to check all the carpeting and all the toilet areas, and we're basically looking for seminal fluid. But we were not able to find any in the house.
The evidence points to a well-planned, premeditated attack.
Initially, we always look at the people that are closest to you, a boyfriend, a jilted lover, or a friend, a coworker that maybe you didn't feel the same way for. We learned through Diane's friends that she'd been married before, but was divorced, and I think she wanted to get married again. And she met a man, Dennis, through an agency called It's Just Lunch. And apparently they hit it off right away. And within 6 months, he proposed to her. He used to live in Austin and he moved to Houston. And so that's why she decided to go ahead and sell her house and move to Houston to be with Dennis.
But friends say Diane's fairy tale romance had begun to falter.
We had heard that he had a short fuse and that he gets mad at the simplest things. Diane liked to go and come as she pleased. Dennis wanted to know where she was every second. She didn't like the fact that he was possessive or jealous because she was so free and outgoing. They had had a lot of on again, off again over the past 6 months, and things seemed to be continually going downhill.
Some of her friends said that maybe they'd broken off the engagement.
And I asked her, so you're still going to sell? She goes, yeah, even if I don't move to Houston, I'm still going to sell. This house is just too big for me and 2 dogs. I want to downsize.
An item absent from the crime scene raises suspicion even further.
She had an engagement ring that Dennis had given her. That was one thing that we knew was missing. If you were going to take a $20,000 ring, why wouldn't you take the watch that was on her wrist or the money that was actually sticking out of her pocket? So things were taken, but they almost appeared to be as if they might have been tokens.
As questions swirl around Dennis, police receive another incriminating clue.
One of Diane's friends knew a lot about Diane's personal life. And she had told us that she believed Diane had made a date for Thursday night online with some man, and she didn't know who it was.
Dennis was very jealous of Diane. If he had found out that Diane was dating other people, yeah, he had been absolutely furious. Furious.
A broken engagement has made Dennis Conley the first suspect in Diane Holik's murder.
Because he was so prone to anger and because Houston's only 2.5 hours away, obviously we focused in on him. It was completely within the realm of possibility that he could come down to Austin, got into an argument with her, strangled her, and then drove back to Houston. Dennis actually left a bunch of phone calls on her answering machine right after the murder occurred. They seemed a little bit on the angry side.
I've been at work for an hour. Where are you? You better not be sleeping.
Hey, you, if I don't hear from you in about an hour, I'm calling the freaking police. I have to go by your house, okay?
Diane, what is going on? Give me a call.
Making contact with a deceased person after the murder is one of the ways that a murderer will try to throw the police off the scent and get the police to believe that you're calling because you did not know the victim had died.
Detective Garish brings Dennis in for questioning.
He did seem a little bit on the aggressive side.
I can't believe I'm here. If you run into problems again with somebody wanting to come down here like this, just tell them it's a private room and there's nobody around, because that's what I didn't want.
Right, okay. How long have you known Diane?
We met about 13 months ago.
Dennis told us that there were problems between them, but they were trying to work it out.
It's just, everybody carries baggage into your relationships at this age, and and our baggage was clashing, and we were working on it, but we decided not to be engaged anymore.
Okay.
And, you know, she was working like a crazy maniac, and I'm trying to get settled in a new job. There was just a lot of stress points. You know, she's so goddamn stubborn.
Detective Garish attempts to establish Dennis's whereabouts in the hours before the murder.
Diane did speak with Dennis around noon on Thursday via instant messenger. He said he was in Houston preparing a presentation Thursday night for a big meeting he had on Friday morning at his place of business.
I've got a friend staying with me, so you can vouch for me if it comes to that.
Through eyewitness testimony from his roommate, cell phone records, we were able to disqualify him as a suspect. Also, when we forensically analyzed her computer, we found no evidence of that date. We were never able to confirm that she ever had a date with anybody on Thursday night.
Dennis had some anger issues, but he couldn't have done this.
Dennis is soon pointing the finger at another regular presence in Diane's daily life.
Has anybody gotten a hold of Ray?
No, we're trying to figure out who Ray is. What's the deal with Ray?
I mean, I don't want to be vindictive, but he's the one that...
We're here to hear it all.
Yeah, so, I mean, Ray, every time I've met him, he's definitely out there on the edge.
Diane had actually hired Ray to be one of her employees, so he worked for her. Dennis said that Ray really had a crush on Diane. He would send her flowers and give her gifts. Dennis thought that that was a little odd.
The way Diane described it to me, he seemed to worship the ground she walks on. He seems to be attracted to women that are not attracted to him.
It's a strong accusation, so police speak to others to back it up.
Ray was pretty devoted to her. He's the one that took care of her dogs when she would go traveling or go out of town. He'd come over, he'd take the dogs home with him, or he'd sit there at her house and take care of them. He was always there.
Ray even appears at the house while police are processing the scene.
The woman who lives up the street called us and said, hey, Ray's over at Diane's house if you want to talk to him. Ray was a little flippant about everything, kind of joking and just odd. I mean, he was almost too enthusiastic about helping us with the investigation.
I know Diane probably better than most people in the town. I watched her house for the last couple of years, her dogs. I can tell you anything you need to know about the house or what she does or anything about it, so
Okay.
we could be here for a long time if you want to. You think that I can help you out?
I kind of want to know her schedule and...
Police, they've got a nose for things that aren't normal. And so if you're really forthcoming and you're really cooperative to a level that just doesn't correspond to what people believe is normal, then it can kind of lead to a creep factor.
Not to bug into your business, but did y'all find any signs of 4th century at all? Like any doors, nothing? She locked everything, so... These are her keys to our house, too, in case you need copies of them for any
To your house?
No, to her house.
Oh, no, I'm going to take those keys.
Okay. That's
She is deceased, and there's really no need for you to be in the house anymore. Who do you know that has keys to the house?
Just me. As far as I know, I think I'm the only person that I know that has keys.
I think he liked her so much that he had hope that one day she would like him or grow to have feelings for him.
People say you might have had a little crush on her.
Diane? Oh, hell yeah. For sure. I always had a crush on Diane.
And Diane didn't reciprocate your feelings?
No.
And that could have angered him. Said, Ray's definitely a potential in this.
It could have been out of jealousy for her being engaged to Dennis and leaving Austin, or he may have made some type of an advance towards her that wasn't reciprocated, and he got upset with her and strangled her.
The fact that she's covered up, there's remorse. Ray could have felt remorse after the murder.
Ray must now account for his whereabouts during the time frame police believe Diane was murdered.
He told us he was at work.
Do you punch in at work?
Yeah, so you can get that too. That's a record you can use. And there's cameras all over the place too in the parking lot. There's a scan card.
Every time you walk out the door, you badge in, badge out.
Have to.
So it's all documented every time he comes in and out of the IBM facility. So we were able to eliminate him through those records. Ray was an odd character, but he wasn't our guy.
Ray continues with his helpful behavior.
There's probably a question that I would like to ask you, but I'm not sure you're gonna be able to tell me or not.
Go ahead and ask it, and I'll let you know if I can tell you.
Did they know where they found her? Was it in the living room, the bedroom? I mean,
Yeah, she was in the upstairs bedroom.
She never goes upstairs. I would guess that she was showing somebody the house, and they went upstairs to look at the house.
In an effort to confirm Ray's theory, they speak to Diane's friends and colleagues.
We found out that, yes, in fact, she had had someone come see the house.
Cynthia was a friend of Diane's, and she knew that Diane was selling her home. Diane had actually contacted her on Thursday, and then she told her, hey, this guy just came to the house. He's moving to town with his wife and kids, but he's going to be paying cash. Diane was really excited that this was a potential buyer for the home. She said he was going to be returning. And I think Cynthia was a little upset with Diane because she allowed a stranger into her home. And she told her, you know, hey, Diane, you need to be careful about letting people into your house. She wasn't really able to give us a description of the person.
Police turn to the nearby community, hoping for a lead on Diane's mystery buyer.
When I first started canvassing the neighborhood, I spoke with the immediate neighbors, and no one had seen anything. And so that was a little discouraging. As I went to the different homes, I was told by some residents that also had their homes for sale that a male had come by interested in buying the property. One of the residents that I spoke to described the vehicle that this man had been driving as a metallic minivan. These people were telling me that the guy made them nervous, that he was kind of domineering.
Detective De Los Santos comes to a man who says he saw a metallic van parked in Diane's driveway around 5 p.m., the day before her body is discovered.
So that definitely threw up a red flag for us.
Police learn of a suspicious man seen near Diane's house on the day of her murder.
I became quite optimistic at that point, thinking, wow, we had a really good lead here on someone that was coming around the neighborhood, given this exact same story. He said that he had cash to pay and that he was kind of previewing the homes before he brought his wife over to look at the homes. Residents described the stranger as a white male with brown hair, kind of a large nose, possibly about 5'10", 200 plus pounds.
They find a woman nearby who is visited by the same man at 3 p.m., the day before Diane's body was discovered.
She definitely got a creepy vibe from him. He had left her a name, Walter Miller, and gave her the telephone number and said that he would be coming back with his wife. When I searched the name Walter Miller through the Austin police database, we only came up with 2. And one was in his 90s, so it obviously wasn't him. And the other one didn't fit the description. So we were able to pretty much rule that name out as being fictitious.
They trace the phone number to Bastrop County, around 35 miles from Diane's home.
It came back to a gentleman by the name of Matthew Sapolsky.
A background check reveals a criminal history.
When we actually located Matthew, he did not fit the physical description of our suspect, and he had also been injured severely in this car accident. And he had a crash collar around his neck, and he was paralyzed in both of his arms.
For investigators, it's clear he could not have physically attacked Diane on the day of the murder.
We were disappointed, but obviously we knew we were onto somebody who was pretty smart. Smart enough to leave fictitious names and numbers. However, they weren't smart in the fact that they way overexposed themselves in that neighborhood that day. But when you're looking for a stranger, the odds of you actually solving that become astronomical.
I kept asking them who could have done this, because it seemed totally random. Totally random.
Diane's father was actually a homicide detective in New York, and so I felt a lot of pressure to make sure that we turned every stone on this case to get justice for that family.
It just hit a little closer to home because I was a homicide detective and I had a daughter. That would be my worst nightmare. So I felt this sense of urgency to solve it.
Using eyewitness accounts, they create a composite sketch of the man and release it to the media.
Within minutes, we started getting multiple phone calls from women that had encountered this man, and they had their homes for sale.
The incidents go back as far as 6 months, all across the Austin area.
It appears that he went to homes during the day, and he went to affluent neighborhoods.
He was targeting a specific time frame to target a specific type of person.
Most of these women were stay-at-home moms, and their husbands were not there. During basically the depression in the real estate market, I think he felt like these women were so eager to sell their homes that they would be more willing to let him in.
So it might be that he just went through all these women because he was looking for the perfect victim. Or it might be that he was building up his courage to finally go through with it.
It was a pattern. It had the telltale signs of a serial killer or someone who could potentially do this again.
They receive a call from someone who encountered the man just 2 weeks before Diane's murder.
A woman called in and said, the same guy that you guys have put on TV came to my house. She said that he grabbed a flyer from the advertised real estate sign from the front of the house. During the visit, our suspect followed her into the master bedroom, and she knew in her heart that something really bad was about to happen. He just had this look in his eye, and then her baby cried. I think he got spooked. And when he got spooked, I think he left the house, not realizing that he left the flyer behind. So we immediately sent a crime scene unit out there to retrieve the flyer.
While waiting for the analysis, yet another woman comes forward.
She claimed that the man came up and was kind of demanding to get into the house to look at it. And she said that he was just so aggressive with her that it made her nervous.
It concerned her enough that she decided to peek out and get his license plate.
The description of the vehicle he was driving was a metallic colored minivan.
This description matches the vehicle spotted in Diane's driveway.
We ran it through our records, and it popped up the name Anthony Russo. And he lived in Cedar Creek, which is out in Bastrop County.
Research on Russo showed that he had a history, a violent history, especially with women.
Police believe they've uncovered the identity of the mystery homebuyer spotted in Diane's neighborhood. 38-year-old Anthony Russo.
Mr. Russo had recently been let go from prison after being incarcerated for an aggravated kidnapping. And in this particular aggravated kidnapping, he tied a woman up, basically held her hostage in her office for several hours.
He spent over 8 years in prison.
During that time, he found God. So now he's out of prison and he's gone to work at this small church in Cedar Creek as a music minister.
After you've done this job for just a few years, you learn that anyone is capable of anything.
So our initial plan to approach Russo was we basically were gonna knock on his door in the middle of the night.
We didn't really know what to expect with this guy, considering his history of violence. So we got to his house at about 4 in the morning. It's a very dark area. There's no street lights. It's out in the country.
We actually saw a metallic colored minivan. He opened the door. He never asked us why we were there.
Russo didn't seem too terribly surprised. We asked if he would come in and speak to him, and he did.
He basically told his wife, you know, I'm on parole. These things are gonna happen from time to time. I'm gonna go ahead and go with them, and I'll be back later.
Things go wrong in your town or something, it's possibly people would look at you. And that's okay. Though I don't know what this is about. And we'll explain that to you when we get there.
Detectives come right to the point.
We had a picture of Diane, and we basically threw it on the table in front of him and asked him point blank, do you know this person?
I want you to be as honest as you can. Do you remember ever talking to her?
Yes, sir.
You never talked to her?
No. I don't remember seeing her or talking
Her
to her
name is
ever.
Diane. You know any Dianes?
No, sir.
So you're saying you've never seen this woman, never been to her house, never been invited to look around?
And he immediately said, is somebody accusing me of robbing them or stealing from them? Because if that's the case, that's not me.
I don't know what to say, but I haven't stolen anything from anybody.
And we basically told him, you know, she's dead. And he said, well, I have nothing to do with that.
I don't know if you noticed when you walked in here, this is the homicide unit. I don't know if you've seen TV tonight, a composite drawing of what looks like you.
I've done a lot of things wrong in my life. I'm telling you, as badly as I feel for this woman here, I'm sorry, but you guys are barking up the wrong tree, and I don't care how hard you dig, you're not gonna find me committing any crime like that.
Their next step is to place Russo on the timeline to determine if he could have killed Diane.
He told us that he was in the Austin area because he was going to a Christian radio station to talk to them about his website.
About what time was that?
So that would have been about 4 o'clock, I believe. Sometimes they answer the door, sometimes they don't. When no one came to the door, I went ahead and left.
The storm blows in, and he ended up getting lost. He said, I was lost, I didn't know how to get out of the neighborhood. He said, but I really didn't know what neighborhood I was in. He called his wife in a panic, and she stayed on the phone with him basically until she directed him out of Austin and got him on his way back to Bastrop.
I know I was on the phone with my wife the entire time going all the way home. I have no idea where I was at.
Do you think it's a little coincidental that several people said that they saw you in the neighborhood?
Well, it has to be coincidental because I haven't been in any neighborhood.
When police dig deeper, his story doesn't hold up.
Everybody in the radio station was preparing for this storm, and part of their tornado protocol is to get everybody that works in the building into the lobby and open the front doors to equalize the pressure if a tornado came through.
So if he had been there, they would have seen him.
If you get questioned, you shouldn't provide false alibis and false evidence, because what you're doing is creating a constellation of facts that are building up against you.
His phone records also indicated that he was still in Austin during the storm.
The phone records indicate he was there around 5 p.m. on Thursday.
We were able to really put him right in the middle of Diane's neighborhood. We were pretty excited because we knew that we were on the right track. We specifically asked him point blank if he was out looking for homes in Austin, if he was in the neighborhood to buy a home, and he flat out adamantly denied that it was not him. He wasn't in the market to look for a home. They couldn't afford that kind of home, and it wasn't him.
Police obtained Russo's fingerprints for comparison.
When they processed the flyer that had been obtained from one of the residents, it had Russo's fingerprints on it that showed that he had been at that residence and that he had given that story to that particular resident.
As homicide detectives, that's the one thing that you're looking for, is that one mistake that opens the case for you.
It proved that he had been the one that was going from house to house that was for sale. He was lying.
Police have Diane Holik's suspected killer, Anthony Russo, cornered, but there isn't enough evidence to justify his arrest.
All we had was a very circumstantial case, so now comes the hard work to make a case against him to keep him in jail and prove that he was there. When we got the fingerprint hit on the flyer, we were able to prove that he lied to us, and that in and of itself is a parole violation, which was enough to revoke him and put him back in jail for making a false report to a police officer. And so this really was a strategy to give us that extra time we needed. We went to Tony's house to execute the search warrant, to photograph the van and collect any evidence that we might get from that van.
I was a bit disappointed when we didn't find anything. And then as we're starting to go down the driveway, I found where you had some wire rolled up, and it was held in place by his white ties.
They appeared to be exactly the same size as what was used to bind her wrists. The thing that really threw it over the top for us was we seized a computer from his home. He was a member of a group that you have to sign on to called Necrobabes. And it is a kind of a fantasy website. Basically, these are vignettes, little stories of women who have been strangled and bound. And there's photographs either of real crime scenes or staged crime scenes that go along with these little vignettes. It became very clear to us that Tony Russo had an affinity for bondage and strangulation.
Police look through Russo's search history and discover he was looking at the site only hours before Diane's murder.
One of the stories had to do with a woman being strangled in her home that was for sale, and that the ruse would be that you make it look like it's a robbery. That was pretty much what he did. He emulated that story almost to a T. That piece of the puzzle was pretty much the last piece we needed. We knew without a doubt it was him.
On May 29th, 2002, Anthony Russo is indicted.
He had this fantasy of strangling women, and I guess it just came a time where he couldn't resist any longer, and he had to act it out.
With Russo still claiming innocence, police use the reconstructed timeline to help prove his guilt.
The day of Diane's murder, I think that Tony had been sharking around in neighborhoods looking for a victim. He came upon Diane's house around noon.
I'm sure he surmised she's single. No one else appears to live in the house. She's a potential. Russo leaves. Diane carries on about her day. As the day progresses, perhaps he went to other locations, other houses, and didn't find what he was looking for.
I think when the storm hit, he felt like that was his opportunity under the cloak of bad weather, that he could go back to that house and commit his crime without anybody ever hearing her scream.
He knocks on the door. Diane lets him in, excited a potential buyer was returning.
He waited till they got to that upstairs bedroom, and that's when he took the opportunity to basically grab her from behind, bind her, and then strangle her.
He comes back down. He's wiped maybe whatever he touched, made sure that he didn't leave anything behind. He gets in his minivan and he leaves.
Tony Russo is a sexual sadist. There were several that were victims of his that came forward. We were lucky that they weren't murdered.
The jury finds Anthony Russo guilty of murdering Diane Holik. He's sentenced to life in prison.
He was sicko, just evil. I keep tabs on Russo because I don't want that SOB getting out.
Tony Russo will never victimize another woman again. He will be in prison until the day he dies. I couldn't have asked for a more challenging case or a more gratifying case at the end of it. I think we're all in this for the justice of the victims and the families that are left behind.
Diane was one of the sweetest persons you could ever meet. She just loved everything, everybody, life. I know she's not hurting, but I still miss her a lot.